Who here has been to an AA meeting before? Okay, you're at one today, and that's what I'm going to do to introduce myself. Now, to protect the innocent, we're going to call it Authenticate Anonymous, all right? But here's my spiel. Hi, my name is Shane.
Hi, Shane.
And I log in at work with an unattested passkey. Shock horror. And that's what this story is about, okay? It's about us bringing passkeys to IBM employees in a way that is not commonly seen, although we did see it from Sydney just before, and I've also seen it from a couple of companies now. It's starting to grow legs. But we started this journey a little while ago, so let me just tell you about it. You don't need too much reminding of the business case for this, but this tiny little graphic in the bottom left was probably the trigger that kicked the butts of a few people in many companies as to why they needed to get a wriggle on, right? This was a phishing campaign against the C-suite of Fortune 500 companies using a phishing-as-a-service platform called Evil Proxy, of which there are competitors now. But it hurt quite a few people, right? And it shook the tree, and it certainly accelerated our adoption. On the right here, I have a little chart. This comes from IBM's Cost of a Data Breach report. We put it out every year. You do not want to be in the magic quadrant of this chart, okay? The magic quadrant of this chart, I'll just tell you how it's read. The x-axis, that's the one that goes from left to right, that's the percentage of times a particular dot on this chart was the initial vector for a data breach, and the y-axis is the cost of that data breach in millions of US dollars. So the magic quadrant is the most common and the most expensive, and that's where phishing lives, and that's why we're all here. The ones that are circled in red, which are social engineering, stolen or compromised credentials, and phishing, they're all the ones that our tech addresses, so that's why it's important. We have another report called the X-Force Threat Intelligence Report. It basically says that the use of valid credentials is the initial attack vector in 71% of breaches that they studied. Don't need to tell you any more about that. So our journey. I joined IBM on the 1st of January 2000, 25 years this year. I don't have a chip, but 25 years it'll be this year. When I joined, we had a common LDAP server. We still have a common LDAP server called bluepages.ibm.com. And everyone stuck up their own either basic auth prompt or a login page and prompted for your intranet credentials. And that was around for a very long time. And as the end user, we had no idea if it was just the guy in the next cube standing up a phishing site and then doing nefarious things. So we moved that to an on-premises product. It was the reason I came into IBM. It's had about 16 name changes. Some of you might remember it as TAM or Tivoli Access Manager. It has a new name coming. It's a surprise. But we put this product into our on-premises environment, and we set up federated single sign-on, and we also set up reverse proxy junctions, we call them. But basically, we acted as a reverse proxy to apps. Now, the problem we had with that thing was it took about 6 months and $20,000 US to onboard an application into that SSO environment. Because particularly with the reverse proxy technology, you had to make sure your application didn't hoggle the resources of the reverse proxy, hold up all the threads, and then shut down other business critical apps. So there's this huge onboarding process, and it was terrible, and no one would get on board with it because it cost too much. So for those smaller apps, they just went back to the thing on the left, right? Which didn't help us. So we did two things. We moved our technology, our IDaaS, to a platform, a SaaS platform. We happen to have one. It's called IBM Security Verify SaaS. And our customer, so I work in product development, right? I help build that thing. I built a FIDO server. Our customer is the IBM CIO, our employees. The other thing we did is we built a self-service application onboarding program. So any developer in IBM can go to a portal, and with just a few clicks, they can onboard a SAML or OIDC application into that platform. Takes just a couple of minutes instead of 6 months and $20,000. So now that we solved that problem and everyone can be part of our single sign-on ecosystem, we decided to hone in on how people are authenticating to it and make that the focus, and that's what this story is about. So, because a little man in a green shirt that may or may not be the host here once called me a small fluffy kitten for not doing a live demo, I'm going to do a live demo today. Here I have a browser with a Box link on it. Box is a document provider. We happen to use them as one of our SaaS providers. This is a don't blink or you'll miss it kind of demo. I go to the provider. It says, yeah, are you from IBM? I am. I hit continue. I sign on with my passkey. A risk engine evaluates that authentication, and I may have conditional multi-factor, in this case not, and there you see today's presentation. That's how I log in at work every day. Okay, a little bit of stats, right? We do have conditional MFA in our environment. We optimize it out in most authentications. If I open an incognito window or a browser I haven't used for ages, I might get interrupted with additional MFA, but it's rare. There are, however, some glaringly poor things that you will see on this chart, and I draw your attention to this one, which is that 90% of our users are still using username and password, okay? And the reason for that actually is because we're on a journey. It's like the hill that we saw from Microsoft in the keynote yesterday. We haven't unleashed this capability on everyone all at once yet. We're quite conservative in our rollout, in fact. One of the things that we do that you didn't see when I logged in is the first time you log into our intranet portal, you're given a choice of 3 different ways of authenticating. 2 of them are phishable, one's username and password. The other is a QR code-based login with a mobile app that we have. And the third is passkeys. And we do something that I hope we reverse very, very soon, and that is that when you pick one, we set a persistent cookie, and that just becomes the one you use next time, so you don't have to make that selection every time, right? And that's why I went straight to Passkey Authentication. But those that went down the username and password route, they have to pick a little link that says View Other Sign-In Options to get back to passkeys. So eventually what we're going to do is get rid of that cookie and sort of push people towards this now that confidence has grown a little bit in it. I want to tell you a little bit more, though, about our journey. So, who remembers the approximate date when synchronized passkeys hit the world? I can tell you it was around June of 2022. And when that happened, because until that point in time, we all believed that every FIDO credential was device-bound. And that made our BSO warm and comfortable. And then this thing happened, and synchronized passkeys hit the world, and he had a little tanty. And he said, and I will paraphrase, whoa, let's pump the brakes on that a bit, Shane. And so we actually had to take a step back, and we ended up not accepting registrations for unattested credentials for quite some time. Windows Hello users that were getting a TPM attestation, they were cool, but not these people who may have synchronized passkeys. And that's partly because our platform made the assumption that all passkeys were device-bound and we can consider them MFA complete, and turns out our business owners weren't quite ready for that. So we just put the brakes on it completely. We re-engineered our risk engine a little bit, and now we do things a little bit differently. So this is what we do now. And I really want to draw your attention to that very first bullet. We firmly believe that any passkey is better than no passkey. And we also believe that, at least for the time being, we're not going to be able to get a hardware security key into the hands of every IBM employee for a variety of reasons. Cost, ability to distribute in all the countries where we do business, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make use of the technology that people have in their hands or on their laptops today. And what we'll do instead is just let them use what they've got, which is typically the platform authenticator, which is what you saw me use. Provide them with other options. I don't think it's certainly no secret that IBM's a customer of 1Passwords. Our logo appears on their website, and so we do offer 1Password and its passkey capabilities to all IBM employees on the platforms where that works. We have MDM for some platforms. But we basically are going to let you use the passkey provider that you have and then apply conditional risk to that and decide what happens next. What we learned was that once we unleash this on like a test group of people, 85% of all registrations on our platform, of which there's a little over 60,000, were platform authenticators, okay? So without that mindset of allowing people in our organization to use the convenient platform authenticators they have, we would have missed a large part of that 85%. Not all of them, because you know, there's a little bit of overlap. That's just a percentage of all registrations, but we would have missed a lot of them. This is, you know, the straw man of how our authentication sequence works. So you log in with a first factor, passkey perhaps. We do an evaluation, a risk evaluation. We call it an access policy evaluation. And there can be many things that are considered in that. It might be that you're going to, you know, an application that has regulatory control, like in a FedRAMP environment. And in that case, you've been given a FIPS-certified hardware security key, and you're expected to use it, and if you don't, denied, right? You're out the left door. But that's not true for all the apps that you visit. We might be able to just do step up to that thing, at least give you the opportunity to do a second factor with your FIPS key. So that's one example, but others are things like, do we have signals from MDM? Do we have signals that we recognize this device because it's, user behavioral analytics are telling us it's you? There's lots of things that we do there. And generally speaking, people get that same pass-through experience that I demonstrated at the start. In terms of obligations, I did mention this, we do support a variety of second factor authentication mechanisms. We obviously filter out the passkey you just used, so you can't just double tap it, right? That was cool. But what obligations we enforce can be dependent on the specific nature or classification of the application that you're going to. Just like I said with the FedRAMP example. Sometimes it might be that you have to use a specific issued credential that you've got. Other times it can be any of the second factors that we support. So things that we're looking at in this near-term roadmap, besides just pushing this experience out to a lot of people. We still have SMS OTP as a second factor. It's still, if you saw those stats on the chart earlier, it's still the most commonly used. It's a lot better than it was even 12 months ago. So TOTP has caught up a lot there in terms of being an independent second factor, but it's on the nose, right? We know it's not recommended. We know it has cost associated with it, all of those sorts of things. So there is a strong desire in our organization to phase it out. And we kind of need to move everyone to passkeys as a first factor in order to do that. We have, I think, Sydney described it as the upsell, as in solicited registration of a passkey during authentication flow. We have that in our pipeline, right? So just like many others have done, even in the consumer space, we will nudge people towards registering a passkey post-authentication. That's something that we're going to add as well. And we're also looking, obviously, to enhance the set of factors that go into that access policy decision to minimize interruption when somebody has used a phishing-resistant credential to log in. We do not want to prompt for that second factor. So anything that comes out of the trusted signals group in FIDO is of great interest to us and our team, as well as stronger integration with our MDM platforms, of which we have more than one. So I'm just going to wrap up with some advice here, right? I've got 2 slides of it. What do they say? Don't bite off your nose to spite your face. you've got to look at what the most prevalent threats to your organization are. And if you need to, go back to the scare chart and look again at that evil proxy campaign against Fortune 500 company C-suite executives. Phishing against high-value targets is an incredibly serious threat. And anyone using a synchronized passkey or any passkey is mitigating that threat. So if you're going to still have heritage authentication factors around, as we kind of do at the moment, right? There are reasons why we can't yet kill the password. There are modalities where passkeys don't work for us yet. We're actively pursuing the vendors that supply us the products where that happens to have that fixed, but that is the case. If that's ever going to be the case with you, if you don't have that environment where it's, passkeys only, then you're mad if you don't let passkeys be at least an alternative to password-based authentication. Right? Yeah. It's just crazy. There's very little foot to stand on. It'd be very hard to stand in front of me and have an argument which says we don't want to let platform passkeys in, but we still accept passwords. Try it. We'll have some fun. And then when you need to, for sure, facilitate higher risk scenarios or higher assurance scenarios by requiring the hardware security key. Right? You can do that in access policies pretty easily. But it doesn't have to be the same for the entire organization. You really need to look at the risk profile of the applications and the scenario that they're accessing it in. Okay, second one, education. Now, I'm going to just show you something here in a minute. I wish we had more Doreens in our organization. If you were at the Microsoft keynote yesterday, you'd know what I meant by that. We seem to have more Homer Simpsons in ours. Like, they try something that doesn't work and they go, dope. I'll go to the help desk. So education about how to onboard with passkeys is really critical because, in the consumer space, the consumer is there to do something and, they're engaged. They want that thing. In the employee space, they just love throwing darts at the organization. That's just sport, right? So you do have to make it pretty obvious. So I'm just going to show you something here. I've preloaded this off our intranet, but we have a page, like a landing page, that we direct people to, in the same way that Google has g.co/passkeys, we have ibm.biz/passkeys, but it's an intranet link, so it won't lead you anywhere that you can get to. But it has this information on it about whether you, simple things like, am I using a passkey or not already? And then click-throughs to what platform you're on and what authenticators you might be able to use on that platform and how to get started with them. So, for example, on a Mac, we encourage you to use 1Password. I already said they were a customer of theirs, or Apple iCloud Keychain, or if you happen to have a security key, use that. So this has been really helpful to be able to get employees informed about the technology, to guide them there from the self-registration page, et cetera. That's going to help a lot. We also have a Slack channel that myself and other subject matter experts monitor. It's got common information on it. And we do find that by using that type of collaborative platform, people end up helping each other, right? And that's exactly what we need. We need that as a whole industry, but it works in our company as well. So consider some nudge theory. We all know that employees are going to use it because it's easier to use, not because it's stronger. But there are other ways to do the nudge, not just solicited passkey registration during login, but we might even do something nasty like introduce higher friction if you log in with a password and force you to do 2FA every time. That would suck, right? That'd be a good reason to move. But, we've done some other things too, like the early adopter departments, their manager gets measured on adoption. So in staff meetings, he has a naughty list. And he identifies people who haven't done it yet, like the guys that work on the Z platform, But seriously, you do have to look at it from multiple angles. How do you get people onto this thing. And this is the last piece of information. We do have some interfaces today where I said we just can't use FIDO yet. It's just a fact of life. So we've come to the realization that whilst we're not quite ready to kill off the password completely in our business, we are going to take people towards passkeys because we get the benefits when they use them, and we're going to just start tapping those other things on the head, as quickly as we can. And that's all I've got for you. I'm happy to take any questions. I hope you found it interesting, and thanks for coming along this afternoon.
Hey Shane, Matt Miller, Cisco. I wanted to know if you had started entertaining the idea of disabling password login for those that have passkeys enabled.
It's a great idea. So the question, if anyone didn't hear it, was, have we considered disabling password login for those where they've already registered a passkey? But for the heritage applications where FIDO doesn't yet work, absolutely we would. One of the things we may well do, which will just help people get to where we want them to get to anyway, is we obviously have some level of client-side detection of whether you're in an environment that supports passkeys or not, right? Although sometimes those things return false positives. But where we can, we won't show the passkey option amongst the three things. What we would like to do is change that persistent cookie behavior I spoke of early about remembering the thing that you use, such that we only remember it if you used a passkey. Well, also, I didn't show you that screen, but passkeys at the moment is at the bottom of the list, and username password is at the top. So we'll naturally start moving that. And it's only there because we had a bit of a rough ride when we first started the journey, and so we wanted it to be there for early adopters to kick the tires, but we didn't want the entire IBM employee population to have a bad experience out of the gate. So yes, we will, but we're not quite ready to do that yet. Any others online? Yeah, come on up.
Hi. Do you do distinction between synced passkeys and security keys in terms of some assurance?
Yeah, so let me give you an example of that. If I heard your question correctly, it's do we differentiate between synced passkeys and security keys, and how do we do that, for example, right? So first of all, when someone registers a credential with us, we do request attestation. Okay, we do request it. Don't always get it, but we request it. If we get attestation, we absolutely use security properties of attestation to classify that type of registration, typically into one of two buckets, or it's actually one of three buckets. There might be FIPS-based buckets for certain federal processing requirements. There might be hardware or device-bound security keys, and then there's the rest, the lowest common denominator, which is, it might not be a synced passkey, right? It might be Chrome on Mac profile, which is actually device-bound, but it's self-attested, so we can't really tell if it's Chrome on Mac. It could be Shane lying that it's Chrome on Mac because he's fiddled that stuff in his browser before he hit submit. So we do differentiate them. We have some federal stuff, we have some device-bound stuff, and then we have the rest. And the rest just fall into the same, I guess, level of assurance as we would for a password for first factor in terms of our access policy.
Follow-up question, do you do, so for the rest, do you do another MFA prompt?
Okay, so the question is, do we do additional MFA for the rest? Well, I did a passkey login, which was in the rest, when I signed on to Box, and I didn't do second factor. So what we do is we use a risk engine to look at other things that are going on during this authentication ceremony, including some stuff that we mine from the browser when the little verifying thing is spinning, a variety of different things. Is this a managed device? There's a whole bunch of attributes that go into that little diamond that says, what to happen next. And most of the time, you're going to come out the bottom and say, no second factor necessary.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and thank Shane for a very insightful presentation.
Thanks, guys.